Another thing we can do at a very simple level is to look at how complex a particular document is. What's complex? Complexity is the average word length of a document. In general, if you have a technical document, it might have longer words. The average sentence length, so a more complex, people are expressing more complex ideas, then they would probably use longer sentences rather than shorter ones. And you would also like to see the vocabulary of the sentence. So for this, it's a little bit iffy, but if you want to see the ratio of unique words used to the total number of words in the document. And this is a little bit iffy because obviously as the document gets longer, the variety in the words is going to be lower in proportion. I mean, there are only so many words in the English language after all. So if you have a book that is 500 pages long and you have another book that is 5 pages long, or short story 5 pages long, the proportion of different words in the 5 pages long text is going to be higher than the proportion of different words in the 500-page text. I mean, it makes sense. So keeping that in mind, so when you do the vocabulary proportion, you probably want to be also comparing documents that are similar in size. Just keep that in mind. So in general, when you're dealing with text mining, you start with the idea of a token. A token is a sequence or a group of characters of interest. For example, we've been using a word as a group of interest, so a word is our token. But it could be a sentence, so it could be a document. It just depends on on what level you want to do the analysis. But generally, a word is not a bad way to look at it. So the first step is always to convert stuff into tokens. And NLTK provides two functions that are useful for that. There's sentence tokenize and word tokenize. And each of them are there to create words and sentences out of the, basically get rid of stuff that is not something that's a word or a sentence, right? Like, for example, punctuation or emojis or stuff like that. So if we take Le Monde data and we word tokenize, sentence tokenize it, we get 188 sentences and 2,595 words in the compendium of reviews of that thing. And we can now look at the sort of complexity of it. So what we can do is we could say, hey, how many characters are there? Well, we have a piece of text. We can count the number of characters. So that's the 12,332 characters. How many words are there? We can count that, and then we can divide the number of words by, we can divide the total number of characters by the total number of words to get the average length of a word. So in the Le Monde reviews, the average length of a word is 4, which is pretty much par for the course. You would expect 4 or 5 to be, in most documents, to be the average length, because there are many words like to, in, and, that are short words, and they get used very, very often. Then you can take the number of words in the text and divide it by the total number of sentences. Right? We know how to calculate those too, and you get a length of sentences feature here, which is 13, which is kind of on the low side, I think, but it's okay. And then you take the vocabulary, that is the number of unique words, and the number of unique words is easy to do. What you do is each word, as you get it, you add it to a set of words. So sets are kind of useful for this, because sets, if you add a word twice, it's just going to ignore the second one. So you get the unique words, that's a vocabulary, and we can take the length of the vocabulary and divide by the number of words to get a proportion of unique words. So this tells us there are 29% of Le Monde's text is words that are used, are the unique words in that text. And we can take this stuff and functionalize this. We're going to use this a little bit, so it's going to functionalize this. So we write a get complexity function, and we can do that for that. So what it does is it returns us a tuple that contains the length of the unique words, 756 unique words, 4 characters per word, 13 words per sentence, and 0.29 is the proportion of unique words to total number of words. And then we can run this for all of them, and we can compare across the text. So we see here that in general, Le Monde actually has the lowest sentence complexity. It's 13, and whereas Community and Heights have 16. So people who write reviews are very naive. Remember, we are looking at 15 reviews out of possibly thousands, right? So it's fairly naive, this thing. But what we are saying is that roughly what we would say then is that the people who write reviews for Community and Heights tend to write more complex sentences than people who write for Le Monde, and Amigos is in the middle. But they all use the same number of characters per word, and they have pretty much the same vocabulary percent here, though Amigos is really low, even though if you look at here, Community has a very high number of words, but if you look at these three, 756, 720, and 792, they're fairly close to each other, and comparatively fewer words are used, fewer unique words are used in Amigos, so they tend to repeat the same words more often, for whatever that means. Remember, this is not really a very scientific piece of analysis here, but that's the idea here. We could do a word cloud comparison. So what we could do here is, and let me just run this and show you what we're going to get out of it. Because what we want to do is, you want to see, are there differences in the way these restaurants are viewed by the reviewers. So if you had 1,000 reviews, this would actually be very, very useful. So what we can do is we generate word clouds, and what we're going to do here is do a couple of things. One is we're doing word clouds. We saw how to do that before. And the second is we're going to do these subplotting like we did with our boroughs and agencies and all that stuff in the data visualization, right? So this is very similar to that thing here. And in this, we have a bunch of stop words. So oh goodness, this thing is not moving very well, is it? Yeah. So here what we do is we construct our word clouds and we remove unwanted words, and we can add as many words as we like to this. So what I'm doing is I'm just saying if we have a string of delete words, then we can just delete them. But I don't have a string of delete words, do I? I have an empty string. I can delete them if I don't like them, right? And then I of course have the stop words from here, but I can delete words that are not germane or don't make sense in my domain, right? So that's an additional thing. I'm just adding that to this. I can remove short words. Short words are words that are shorter than a certain length, minimum length. And here I've just said 0 initially, but we can do that stuff here. And now we have 4 restaurants, so I have a 2x2 array, 2x2 subplot structure, and then we use the same thing that we did before and show our thing here. And this is a little bit on the big side here. Let me see if it fits. Yeah, kind of. Let me see if I can make the height 900. It's a little bit smaller. That's a little bit better. So what this tells us is that if you look at this, Community is good for brunch. Le Monde also has some brunch, but we don't see brunch in Heights and Amigos. So clearly, people don't really use Heights and Amigos, or don't talk about brunch anyway when they talk about Heights and Amigos. Heights has a bar, like I said before, that has a good bar. People like it because of the bar, and we see bar shows up as a huge word over here. This has pancake, so I guess pancakes are good. Coffee. This probably has burritos, quesadillas, and margaritas. So it's more of a Mexican kind of place, right? So quesadillas, margaritas, and those kind of things. So when we look at these things, night, food, bar, we can clearly almost sort of visualize that this place is good for brunch. It has pancakes, brunch food, eggs, that kind of thing. This place is also has French food. It says French. It's got people talk about service. We don't know whether they say good service or bad service, but it also has dinner, so it's probably a dinnerish place. And drinks are good. Coffee is good over here, or at least they talk about coffee. We don't know if it's good or bad. And these ones are more Mexican oriented here with margaritas and quesadillas and those sort of things. And Heights also has tacos, Mexican food, and the bar is really one reason why people like it so much. So comparing restaurant reviews is not going to get us anything useful. So what we want to do is we want to look at the NLTK's inaugural text. Okay? So NLTK contains this huge corpora of pre-tokenized text, which we downloaded up front before we started this thing here. And what you want to do is you want to import that corpora. So let's just do that. And when you've finished importing it, we'll start on the next video.